I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and I just don't know who to contact or who to tell. Maybe someone out there can help. Back in April, the beginning of April of 2021, I took a drug test. No big deal. Don't do any drugs. Use ibuprofen. I used to use a CBD cream for my hands because I play guitar and it actually helped, but I don't anymore because I took a drug test. The lab contacted my employer, told the employer the drug test was lost. My employer immediately sent me back. As soon as I was back, they sent me to get another drug test. I drive a truck over the road. So this all occurred in about a week's time between the two drug tests. So I go back, I take the second drug test, and the next day we have the results. They come back negative. No worries, nothing like that. A month goes by. A month goes by. Then supposedly my first drug test mysteriously shows up. Just turns up. Then it had the wrong paperwork with it. So they submit new paperwork with that first drug test. There's this thing, especially in the trucking industry, there's a chain of custody. Once the wrong paperwork was submitted, the whole chain of custody is lost. That first drug test that was first lost, then mysteriously shows up a month later, then no longer has a valid chain of custody. They submit it with new paperwork without me signing that new paperwork. And that drug test comes back positive. And then they submit that to the government clearinghouse for truck drivers. I had to take pretty much a month of sick leave. Had to go to an SAP, a SAP, an SAP, a substance abuse professional. And now, once a month, every month for a year, I got to stand in front of somebody and pee in a cup. Now, there's a number of issues with this. Years ago, I went to an Afro Man concert. Granted, when you drive a truck, you shouldn't have a life. You should not do anything. You should not go to church. You should not get on an airplane. You should not go to a bar. You shouldn't go anywhere where anybody's ever gotten anything tainted with any kind of drugs. As a truck driver, you know this. You should not hang out with police. Anybody who's ever been drugged, any profession that's ever been drugged, we know about the chief that, he ate the muffin. We know about at the church where they had tainted cookies. We know about the lady on the airplane that somehow somebody drugged her on the airplane. You shouldn't go to any school kind of things because we hear about that all the time about kids being slipped things. And this is all around the THC stuff. So, I shouldn't have went out that night. I shouldn't have had a good time. I shouldn't have done something that normal people do. So, that was my fault. Begrudgingly, but I accept it. It was my fault. I chose to live for a night. And We don't know if it was that I was going through a divorce at the time. Me and my wife were separated. Actually, we are divorced now, but me and my wife were separated. So I was talking with a girl. She gave me a Jolly Rancher. We don't know if the Jolly Rancher was actually a Holly Rancher, or if it was the fact that because it was also ladies' night and we were letting the girls buy us drinks, you know, because you get buy one get one free on ladies' night. So we were letting the girls buy us drinks, and so we were drinking a lot of fruity stuff like hurricanes and tequila sunrises, you know, girly drinks. So we don't know how, but we know somehow or another I got something with THC in it. And we know it was that night because we all got sick that night, but I'm the only one that gets drug tested, so we all thought we had food poisoning, and it turns out that it wasn't food poisoning, that, you know, our symptoms are common with getting a heavy dose of a THC substance that you would put in a drink, or if you got a heavy dosed candy, you know, anything like that, or, you know, multiple drinks with a heavy THC content in them. But that's what it turns out that our symptoms actually were from. All of us got sick that night. We just thought that it was something bad that we ate because we were out all night. We got drunk. We really got drunk. Really got hammered. Normally don't get to go out and drink. So, you know, like I said, that was all my fault. When you have a CDL, you're not supposed to go out and do things. Remember this, ladies, especially lady truck drivers, remember this. When you go to a bar, all your rights go out the window when you get drugged. If you get drugged when you go out to a bar and you're not aware of it because you're drinking and you get drunk because you're out with the ladies, and you're screwed. Because we know that's what happened that night, and it doesn't matter. But, you know, I accept it. It was my fault. I chose to go out, chose to have a life. But this other test, I don't do anything anymore. All I do is work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year because of a completely unjustified alimony judgment that was put against me after the judge at our alimony hearing said that that judgment wasn't going to ever be put against me because it was a ridiculous amount. But the only way I can afford to pay it, and I can still barely afford to pay because I'm actually in arrears, but the only way I can afford to even try to keep up with it is I don't take no time off. I can't afford to take time off. So all I do is I'm in this truck. So I know I wasn't around anybody. The doctors all say that the CBD hand cream couldn't have done it. Can't be responsible for how I failed that drug test. But then all the doctors also agree that it doesn't make sense that if I go, they lost the drug test, and only a couple days later I'm going back and I'm taking the drug test, and they're finding THC in my system, you know, big amount of THC in my system. There's no way I could have passed the drug test a week later. THC doesn't get out of your system that quick. It's in your system. I'm DOT. I'm regulated by the federal government, and they make sure that, you know, they test for anything that you can use in your system to flush your system, and that stuff stays in your system for days too. So, you know, and the second drug test was random as well because I didn't know I was going to be getting that second. I was there in Chicago. They called me up that morning. Safety told me what was going on and said, you know what, why don't you just come in? We're going to send you, let you go take. I mean, you couldn't get more random than that. It was just as random as the first one. If anything, if I was doing drugs, there's no way I would have passed the second drug test because I knew I just took a drug test. So, you know, everybody who's looked at it, I mean, I don't want to speculate, because honestly what I thought happened was I must just, when this all first happened, I was like, I must have touched something, and it was on my hands, holding the cup, peeing in the cup, and then handling the cup, contaminated the cup. That was my thought. That's not what almost everybody else has, a completely different speculation, which I'm not going to get into. But the fact of the matter is, they lost the drug test. The drug test was no longer in a valid chain of custody. The drug test no longer even had the proper paperwork with it. The drug test submitted didn't even have my valid signature on it, because I didn't sign the new paperwork. And there was no new chain of custody. The only new chain of custody was in the second drug test that I took, that I passed within days. And you can't get a hold of anybody. You can't get nothing done about this. I mean, this is my career. And I have enough problems in my life right now. I mean, I don't even drink. I had a bottle of tequila that lasted me 2 years. I mean, yeah, I go out from time to time. I'm not going to say I've never been out, because like I said, I was at that Afro-Man concert. We went out that night drinking. Went to that concert. We went bar hopping. We were all over Daytona that night. Got into a bar fight. Rescued a homeless guy that was accused of shoplifting sunglasses that he didn't really shoplift. They were old beat up glasses, and the guy was accusing him of shoplifting the glasses. So we just paid for a brand new pair of glasses for this guy to keep him from going to jail over what was obviously an old pair of sunglasses. I mean, there's things of that night that we can remember, and there's things of that night that, some of us remember, some of us don't, and then there's things of that night that none of us remember, except for the designated driver. But I don't regularly drink even. Like I said, I had a bottle of tequila last me 2 years. I'm not talking, it was a big bottle. It was just a regular bottle of tequila, Lasted me 2 years. But, someone's got to fix this, because it's ridiculous. I've checked in almost every drug testing lab that I've asked. They have where if the drug test gets lost or misplaced, it's automatically disqualified. And this company, I'm not going to call them out by name. I mean, if I was talking to a reporter, I would tell the reporter, the name of the lab, or a lawyer the name of the lab, but I'm not going to call them out by name on this, because, I don't want them coming after me. But the lab lost my drug test. They had the incorrect paperwork with the drug test. Then they submitted new paperwork with a fraudulent signature, with my signature forged. I didn't sign that new paperwork. And they can say that's a valid drug test. How is that a valid drug test? No one even knows where that drug test was. No one even knows where my specimen was. It was lost for a month. No one knows what happened with my specimen. And the thing is, my company's had my back with this the whole time. The company I work for has had my back with this, through this the whole time. We're sharing with sucking up the costs of this drug testing. It's $80 a month every single month now. And some months I'm paying, some months they're paying. We're sharing the cost of it. But I mean, they have my back. I mean, They gave me a medical leave so that I couldn't get in trouble for not working because of my alimony. So I couldn't get in trouble for not being at work. They gave me a medical leave. Legally, it's a medical leave. I mean, according to that lab, I was a drug addict. So drug addiction is a medical condition. So they gave me a medical leave so that, you know, like I said, I couldn't get in trouble for not being able to work. And as soon as everything was done, went back, you know, we did the return to duty drug test, and I got right back out in the road. My truck, they kept my truck for me. They didn't let anybody in my truck. I kept all my stuff in my truck. You know, they had my back through all of this because they know too. Because like I said, as soon as we found out that the first drug test was lost, they sent me to get a second drug test. Within 24 hours, we had the results for the second drug test. That's the way it's supposed to be. You know, exception of the weekend, you should have your results within 24 to 48 hours. Over the weekend, then you have 24 to 48 hours from, like, if you went in Friday morning, you would expect it by Tuesday morning, the latest. You know, if you go in on a Wednesday, you expect it by Friday. It's usually there on Thursday, but you expect it by Friday. That's the way a normal drug test works. At least in all my history with taking drug tests. And it's just, you know, maybe someone out there knows somebody, maybe a lawyer. Maybe there's a lawyer out there, because I'll tell you something about the lab that lost my drug test and then did all that with my drug test. I know of somebody. I'm in the middle of the state dealing with a lab, with one of their labs in the middle of the state. All the way over on the East Coast, I know of somebody else they lost half their lab work. And the lab work that they lost was life-threatening lab work. It's for a lupus patient. And then I also know that the lab lost another person's drug test. Well, they didn't lose the drug test. The drug test wasn't properly handled. And they had to go back in and take another drug test because when they got the drug test, it was leaking all over the specimen bag. And then they also lost, the same lab also lost somebody's blood work at the same lab where I went to take my drug test. So, you know, this lab has all kinds of issues. So maybe there's a lawyer out there that, you know, I'll give him my information, and maybe, you know, we can get enough people together and we can actually go after this lab, because, you know, this is just, in all honesty, it's cost, you figure just the drug tests alone, you figure if my employer is paying half of them and I'm paying half of them, it cost me and my employer both $400 a piece just for that alone. Then you have the return to duty drug test, which was another $80. And then you had my SAP, which was $300. And then you have all my lost wages for the month, which is about, on average, it's about $4,200, $4,000 to $4,200. For the company, my truck sat the whole time. The insurance was paid on the truck the whole time, and the truck wasn't generating any revenue the whole time. So the truck lost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So, you know, there's a lot of money with just me alone, just one person. And if this lab has been doing this to other people, I'm sure there's other people out there that this has happened to, and they can prove it because they got a paper trail like I do. Because we have a paper trail. We could prove that something is completely wrong, because THC doesn't get out of your system in days. THC gets out of your system in a month. And actually, modern THC gets out of your system in months. You know, that old 30-day rule that people used, you know, when I was a teenager, we all talked about, 30 days it's out of your system. That's not the case anymore. Modern THC, it could be anywhere from 60 to 90 days to get out of your system. So that whole, no. So I'm sure there's other people out there that, they've gone through this. And if you're one of them people, just leave a brief comment in the comments, and I'll message you, I'll message you with a email address that you can contact me at. Because, hopefully, I can find a lawyer that will take this case up. Because I don't have the money to pay a lawyer. Like I said, I'm drowning in debt with my alimony as it is. I ain't got no money to do drugs, honestly. That's my vice. I smoke cigarettes. I don't even drink anymore. Like I said, I have a drink from time to time, but I don't drink. I can't remember the last time I was out at a bar. I mean, I've been out at a bar since that night at the Afro Man concert, although I didn't go to a bar for almost 2 years after that. A year and a half, something like that. It was a long time, but it was a long time before I would even eat out. And I refuse to buy anything from bake sales because of that experience. I don't buy, even church bake sales. I heard, there's stories out there, not just bake sales, but there's actually stories out there where the whole congregation gets drugged because somebody uses the THC butter to make the chocolate chip cookies, then hands them out to everybody at church. Then nobody at the church can pass a drug test for a month, 2 months. That's it, There's that story about that police chief, all he did was eat a muffin. Then he can't figure out what's wrong with him, acting like, his face is peeling off or something. Turns out that, the muffin was, and he didn't know. So, it's not like these things don't happen. But like I said, in my case, I know that isn't what happened because we have the second drug test to prove that isn't what happened. Something else happened with that first drug test. Like I said, I apparently am the only one that thought that. I'm not going to make what everybody else thinks here publicly, but everybody else who I've told the story to, they've all said the same exact answer. Nobody thinks I was personally targeted. It's not like that. But my being a truck driver is why they think that was, because they knew that my pee was almost definitely going to be clean. Put it that way. So, like I said, if you've had something like that happen to you, just leave a comment down here and, in the comments, and I'll put my email. I'll put an email where you can contact me, or I'll contact you. So we'll figure out how to contact through there. Contact with an email or something. If you're a lawyer, I'd love for a lawyer. If you're a lawyer, please comment in there for me to contact you, and I'll tell you exactly who the lab was. And I can show you copies of the paperwork to validate once you see the dates, it all makes sense. Because like I said, modern marijuana doesn't stay in your system for that. That's the old school marijuana. Marijuana ain't like that anymore. Marijuana stays in your system now for, a minimum 45 days, but generally it's 60 to 90 days. So, yeah. Let me know what you think.